let's get this straight up front. Papaya Koala does not hate Lando. What we hate is what's been done to Oscar to prop Lando up, on track, off track, in the media, and especially Lando's increasingly enthusiastic participation in that process. Like a lot of F1 fans, I genuinely liked Lando once. He was fun, self-deprecating. No wins, no worries Lando. When he finally won in Miami, thanks to a convenient safety car, I was genuinely happy for him. Then something shifted. Maybe Lando changed, maybe the mask slipped, maybe success just amplified what was already there. Either way, lovable underdog Lando quietly exited stage left and was replaced by entitled main character Lando, and it's been downhill ever since. After Miami 24, the cracks started showing. Austria 24, Lando trashes his car returning to the pits against explicit instructions, and specifically because stopping when he was told to would have triggered a safety car that would have handed Oscar his first win. That's right, Oscar should have won Austria. Lando's own selfish actions made sure he didn't. Silverstone 24. Oscar is intentionally held back so Lando can secure a podium at his home race. Oscar loses a definite podium and a potential win just so Lando can have the podium. Lando gives exactly zero acknowledgement. Instead, we get speeches about how special it is to have two British drivers on the podium after Oscar was denied a podium in his own home race via team order. Hungary 24, yep, we all saw it. Oscar gives up 2 priority pit stops to protect Lando. Lando repays him with a 13-lap tantrum, a brake check, and one of the worst podium sulks in recent F1 history, all lovingly excused by the British media. Oscar's first win should have been pure joy. Instead, it was overshadowed by Lando's behaviour, including deliberately excluding Oscar from the champagne celebration, leaving Oscar standing awkwardly alone on the podium until Lewis, of all people, stepped in to fix it. But the damage was already done, and Oscar's first well-deserved win was forever tarnished. For the record, Lando didn't gift Oscar his first win, as Lando fans like to claim. Lando tried to steal it. And while Lando partied for days after his first win, Oscar celebrated his by eating McDonald's and playing Uno with Alex and Charles at the airport, waiting for a delayed flight because Lando dragged an unaware Max into his nastiness, which has led to a cooling of their friendship too. Max, it seems, despite the media portrayal otherwise, has more conscience than Lando. Lando got balloons, cake and a party. Oscar got a lobby photo. Yep, subtle. Brazil, Qatar, more team orders, more narrative protection, more Oscar sacrifices, more gaslighting from the team insisting there is no favouritism while practicing it with the subtlety of a brick. And still not a single acknowledgement by Lando. Instead, more snarky comments about how he deserves the favourable treatment, and don't get me started on Lando's not talent, just luck comment about Max. The comment that was supposedly taken out of context, despite being repeated several times. Funny how context keeps changing, but the quote stayed exactly the same. Poor loser springs to mind, especially when Max, of all people, chose to just brush it off, even after his own Miami win had effectively been taken by Lando's actual luck, not talent moment. Perfectly timed safety car, and Max still jumped to Lando's defense in Miami and Brazil, which says so much about Max's character and Lando's lack thereof. And let's not pretend 2024 was a one-off. It was just the universe's way of saying, mate, buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. This year we had Australia, Hungary, Silverstone, Monza. Yep, That, Monza, and then Mexico, where things went from questionable to actively despicable because in Mexico there were plans, capital P, plans, that Lando was very much in on and Oscar very much was not. Oscar later mentioned that his car was unchanged, but that he was suddenly being forced to drive it differently. Funny thing is, it turns out the car was changed. Oscar's car developed a strange software glitch the engineers called latency drift. Only on Oscar's car, of course, and that glitch forced him to drive with predictive vision. Even Stella was stunned at how quickly Oscar learned and adapted to a car that was so fundamentally flawed that it should have been undrivable. All of which makes Lando's Mexico radio comments age like warm milk. The less I know, the better. And the all-time classic, all going to plan then. He said right after Wiseau Will calmly informs him that Oscar was running 11th. So here's the obvious question. Why was the plan for Oscar to be out of the points? Why did Lando, Will and Snake all seem aware of it? And why was the one person actually driving the car the only one left in the dark? Because at some point, this stops looking like coincidence and starts looking very much like design. And Lando? Yes, he was jubilant, beaming. The kind of happy that only seems to appear when Oscar's race has been helped along. Even the booze couldn't wipe the smile off his face. But then the data came out. Stella acknowledged software issues affecting Oscar, and suddenly Lando's smug grin vanished. Did Stella, an engineer sharp enough to spot a loose decimal from 3 garages away, realize what had been happening without his knowledge and quietly make it clear that the fun, aka sabotage, was over? And did Lando, fully aware that in equal unadulterated machinery, realize that Oscar is not so easily handled and the outcome isn't so comfortable anymore? Now Singapore 25, and somehow, once again, Oscar wasn't invited to the celebration. The team partied, the cameras rolled. Oscar sadly watched it all on a monitor. McLando claimed it was media obligations, except Lando was meant to be in the media pen too. The FII later confirmed McLando knew that Oscar could have been excused, just like Lando was. Then came the first rewrite. We didn't realise Oscar wasn't there. Sure, they really didn't even notice their championship leader was absent? Then they said they tried to contact him, but Oscar's media rep stood right behind him with 2 phones and a radio. No calls, no messages, nothing. All inconveniently caught on camera. Then the next excuse from Fat Rat and Lando, claiming when they realised Oscar wasn't there, that they discussed that his exclusion would be a bad look.
When we realized Oscar wasn't there, we thought, man, this is going to look terrible.
Funny, because the cameras never left them, and the partying never stopped. No concern looking around as Fat Rat claimed, again all caught on camera. The story has changed so many times now that it is clear that Fat Rat and McLando just can't get their fabricated story straight, or do they just keep making up new stories when they realise that people don't believe their previous ones? Or are they scraping the barrel looking for any excuse that doesn't reflect poorly on everyone in that team? Because honestly, none of the excuses they have made up so far are a good look. Perhaps the only believable story is that celebrating without him just suited the Lando is the only champion narrative, but again, that truth reflects poorly on the whole team. And then we come back to Lando himself, since it is Lando's own behaviour we're supposed to be discussing here. After admitting to intentionally crashing into his teammate while avoiding another car, there was no apology, no accountability, just a smirk and the suggestion that if Oscar didn't like being crashed into, maybe he didn't belong in F1. The media called it a joke. Oscar probably didn't. And that's the point. This isn't hate. It's a pattern, and if Papaya Koala sees it, you can bet everyone else does too. But the worst of all was yet to come. Yep, Qatar 25. If Oscar had been pitted under safety car as he should have been, when he earned the right by track position and qualifying, he would now be world champion. Yes, even with all the other favourable calls supporting Lando at Oscar's expense all year, it came down to just one race. It was Qatar alone that cost Oscar the title. Don't believe me? Just do the maths. Instead, the team, more worried about Lando's feelings due to potentially being disadvantaged by a double stack, chose to steal Oscar's title and gift it to Lando. We all saw a bewildered Oscar standing alone in Parc Fermé, while the team was elsewhere managing Lando's disappointment tantrum. Now, Oscar's own team intentionally stole his championship, and Lando still acted like the victim. I noticed something was off. No McLandos, no teammate, no engineer, just an empty space where Oscar's people should have been standing. Awkward enough that other teams started trying to pull Oscar into their celebrations instead. Meanwhile, Stella and Fat Rat, true to form, couldn't even front up. After orchestrating the slow-motion heist of Oscar's well-earned first title, they vanished. No acknowledgement, no apology, no accountability. Just silence. Worse still, McLando's PR machine went into full spin mode, banging on about how great it was for Lando, how all he needed now was a podium, effectively throwing an early champagne shower over Lando's championship moment, while barely acknowledging the driver they'd just kneecapped to make it happen. And here's the kicker, even the famously biased sheep media, Lando's natural habitat and biggest apologist, couldn't refrain from commenting on the injustice, off the record for fear of, repercussions. One stated the mistreatment of Oscar was the worst he'd ever seen towards a top driver. Another admitted they'd never witnessed a potential world champion undermined so openly by their own team. When the Lando cheer squad can't ignore it anymore, you know it's not fan imagination. It's not online noise, and it's definitely not a misunderstanding. It's favouritism, no matter how hard Fat Rat wants us to pretend otherwise. It takes an unprecedented level of willful ignorance for Lando's fans to still pretend it isn't happening. Then came the championship victory speech. The one that sounded less like gratitude to a champion who was forced to give up their title, and more like thanks to a very compliant junior support driver who wasn't in the running, which is Lando himself feeding the Lando is so great McLando narrative. And that's the core problem. Lando isn't the first driver in F1 history to benefit from a number 2. He is one of the few who refuses to admit he has one. Worse, he's allowed, encouraged and benefited from Oscar being dragged down so he can be lifted up. If Lando just once admitted what's been going on, the overt favouritism, the clear priority given to him at Oscar's expense, things might feel different. If Lando just once acknowledged even one of the many times Oscar's points, positions or outright wins were taken and quietly handed to him, then maybe there'd still be some respect left. We might not love Lando the way we once did, but at least we could respect the honesty. Instead, we get silence, shrugs, smirking platitudes, and a carefully maintained narrative that pretends none of this ever happened. Which makes the contrast to history's F1 greats even more uncomfortable. Michael Schumacher, at the peak of his power, gave us a masterclass in Austria 2002. After Barrichello was forced to obey team orders, Schumacher didn't hide behind PR or let the moment pass quietly. He physically pulled Rubens onto the top step of the podium, openly acknowledging what had been done to help him. And here's the key detail. Unlike Oscar, who was in the fight till the very end, but Rubens wasn't even in the World Championship fight at that point that year. In fact, the Schumacher dragged Rubens onto the top step and paid $1 million fine for it because integrity mattered to him more than optics. Lando won't even drag himself to a microphone and admit what we all watched happen. So spare us the excuses. Lando could afford that lesson just fine. After all, he's the second richest driver on the grid, trailing only Lance. A fine wouldn't break him, but an admission might actually save something far more valuable. Because right now, it's not the results that hurt his legacy, it's the refusal to acknowledge how they were achieved. The team's favouritism is bad enough. The denial, revisionism and gaslighting make it unbearable. No one likes being lied to, especially when we can all see clearly what is happening. McLando's constant lies and gaslighting are insulting. I mean, do they really think we are that stupid? Oscar has taken the shafting with professionalism, dignity and class that Lando could only dream of. And the people who actually run F1 teams know it, which is why Oscar is in demand. And Lando isn't. If this feels like hate, maybe it's worth asking why the facts feel so uncomfortable. Is it because the actions themselves are indefensible? Oscar does everything he's asked to do, even when it costs him, and yet he's treated as a necessary inconvenience rather than a valued team member. The way Lando and the team behave toward a genuinely decent, not to mention compliant young bloke isn't rivalry. It's more like kicking a puppy and then acting offended when people call it out. Lando's transition from lovable larrikin to entitled brat was so fast it gave the entire F1 world whiplash. One minute we had adorable, cheeky, self-deprecating, aw shucks Lando. The next, snarky villain energy, premium favourite child entitlement package included. The shift was so abrupt fans didn't even get a grace period. No adjustment phase, no warning montage. Just vibes, ego and confusion. And now we're all standing here, slightly shell-shocked, collectively mourning the nice Lando we weren't emotionally prepared to lose. Because this version, this new Lando, makes people sad. What most fans actually want isn't to hate him, it's to have the old one back. The guy who hadn't won yet, but somehow felt more authentic because of it. Lando seems convinced that time will politely erase how this title happened, that history will forget the inconvenient part where Oscar and Max arguably deserved it more. He wanted to be remembered as a champion, but history has a habit of keeping receipts. And unless something changes, he won't be remembered as the champion. He'll be remembered as the least deserving champ in F1 history, which is impressive considering JV already set that bar dangerously low. Ironically, Lando may have been remembered far more fondly if he'd never won at all. Forever the lovable Nearly man, instead of the champion everyone still has questions about. 20 years from now, had Lando never won, I would still remember him fondly. Thinking Lando was such a great guy, it's such a shame he never won. Now, I will likely look back with scorn, thinking I really wish he had never won. So, no, this isn't Lando hate. This is about setting the record straight. Because when a title is gifted, stolen or bought, fairness disappears and the narrative is forcibly rewritten. And someone has to say what actually happened. And unfortunately for McLando, that someone is a koala.
Cut it out, you two. There are cameras here.